Good day, everybody. In today's content, we focus on Stellar's native token XLM and analyzing potential alt-season and euphoric targets. Do stay tuned. Nothing that I say is financial advice. Let's dive into the content. So with XLM, I think it's very important to zoom out. When in doubt, zoom out. We're on the 3-month time frame right this second. And I do believe that XLM is in a massive macro bullish structure. And this structure has in fact been in motion for a very long time. We're talking about a period where XLM has been sort of consolidating sideways ever since the prior all-time high in January 2018. And we're looking at a rough sort of 2,830-day macro level of resistance. So you can see that the prior all-time high in January 2018 of roughly around 92 cents was a major level of resistance where we corrected to this ascending support. We then had another run up into 2021 and failed to break this macro resistance, came back down to support, ran into key moving averages, these yellow and blue lines. The blue is the 10 EMA and the yellow is the 20. We then came back to support again. So this essentially here was some sort of double bottom on this ascending support line, and then sort of fast forward to October 2024 leading into January. This is where we got the sort of really nice euphoric pump leading into this resistance. So you can see for the last sort of 3, 6, 9, 12, roughly about the past year, ever since coming into January 2025, it's been a bit of sideways accumulation. And I honestly feel like what this structure is an ascending triangle, a massive ascending triangle. Again, over 2,300 days of accumulating under this macro level of resistance with higher low structure. So we're going to look at the psychology behind ascending and descending triangle patterns. Now, if you can see the sort of similarities here, looking back at XLM, what we have is a macro level of resistance, a key level of ascending support on the 3-month time frame, and these sort of higher lows, these 3 higher low macro bottoms. Now, if we look at a ascending triangle here, you can see that you come up into resistance, you come back for a higher low, resistance again, higher low, and eventually get the breakout. And this is how you actually trade the range. So you go from the macro level of resistance back down to the first point of contact on support. You will then drag this target up above the macro resistance level, and this is how you get your potential ascending triangle breakout target. So I honestly feel like what's going on now is XLM is hovering underneath this macro resistance, has been for the past year, but is also holding this blue line to a T. You can see almost in sort of April 2025 into July, we've been hovering above this macro EMA. Okay, this 10 EMA. And then beneath that, we also have the 20, which hasn't seen a touch point for a very long time. So at this moment in time, if we're to sort of measure the breakout target here for XLM, what we do is go from the macro level of resistance back down to the level of support. And when XLM can actually get this breakout, you've got a potential target here after that 2,000-day accumulation period of pushing towards sort of $6. Now, if there's any sort of confluence, what we could do here is get a fib on. Essentially, what XLM is trying to do is go from this previous cycle low in January 2020, retracing back to the all-time high, and it does have these 3 Fibonacci extension targets that I'm looking at. So initially, I think $2.50 to $4 is probably very attainable. And you can see that the target we're looking at here, roughly of around, what are we looking at? We was looking at sort of $5.80, sits bang in the middle between the 1414 and the 1618 fib extension. So these, if XLM can come up and actually break through this macro resistance, as I said, it's been holding a key level of support above the 10 EMA right now. You can see we're sort of getting squeezed. In fact, it does look like we potentially could have a smaller ascending triangle within this formation. If I take off the 10 and 20 EMA here, you'll see that XLM's been caught on this ascending level of resistance and getting really compressed into this apex where you're building these higher lows. So essentially this structure right here is another ascending triangle within a larger ascending triangle. And again, there's confluence there with the 10 EMA, the blue line, which currently sits at 24 cents, which is acting as a key level of support right now. So if we do get this compression really tight coming into towards the end of the year, this is where that explosive break could happen for XLM, which would push it towards that $2.40 to $4. And then I think max euphoria, we could see a potential wick up towards $8.50. $1,450. Now, in this sort of move from current prices, you're looking at the 1414 at $4 is an 11x. And then the 1618 roughly sits at $8.50 and is a 25x from current prices. Now, again, to validate that, what we would like to see is a break of this macro resistance. Third time lucky? Potentially so. We've got 3 major higher low contact points on support. And we also have 3 points of contact on resistance. Okay, so these are the 3 contact points on support. This is the previous resistance from the previous all-time high in 2018. This is the 2021 cycle. And right now we're hovering under this level of resistance, building higher low structure. Okay, the structure is a little bit different from previous cycles. If you look back at XLM here, when it actually topped out, you can see that once it lost the 10 EMA, this is when it entered the bear market. Fast forward to, looking back at 2017 to 2018, when it lost the blue 20 EMA, this is when it entered a bear market. So as long as XLM is above 24 cents and is above this macro EMA, this 10 EMA, everything is jiggy. I don't see any concerns right now. We've got 3 major points of contact on resistance, 3 major points of contact on support. We've been coiling up for over 2,000 days, and the similarities are kind of mind-blowing. If we kind of look at XRP for a very quick second, okay, and look at XRP's sort of structure, I think that XLM is doing something very, very similar, okay, where XRP, if I remove these drawings, XRP had a very similar structure, okay, it had these base lows, okay, this ascending levels of support, and then it also had this sort of level of resistance that it needed to break out of. XRP was coiling up for a very long time, and it actually broke out and is hovering above that previous level of resistance and holding it as support. So XLM could literally be a precursor and just lagging behind XRP, waiting for that breakout. And what we tend to see, okay, when we do get these breakouts on the ascending triangle, a healthy backtest would be a beautiful thing. So if we did initially start breaking out of this macro resistance, which, by the way, guys, this level of resistance we need to see monthly or 3 monthly candle closes above is 42 cents. If XLM can close above 42 cents, it will be the highest candle close in its history. So that would be a very, very strong signal and breaking through this resistance to give confluence to reaching towards these euphoric targets. Again, zooming out when in doubt is always a shout. Okay, the macro picture here is screaming for higher as long as XLM is above its 10 EMA, which is at 24 cents, and also its 20 EMA on the 3-month, which sits at 19. So ultimately, the support base here is roughly between 24 to 19 cents. And as long as XLM holds above that, there is a good chance here that we can get the macro resistance breakout heading into Q4, potentially even into Q1 of 2026. Now, there's also a few other indicators and things that I wanted to look at here. So if we get the EMAs off and we look at the Gaussian channel on the 3-month time frame, XLM initially came back to the 3-month upper regression band of the Gaussian channel, which is this green line at the top here, in one of its previous bear markets, in fact, in January 2020. And this is when it went for another attempt at breaking this level of resistance, but met it as resistance once again. Now, after touching the upper regression band of the Gaussian channel, XLM then had another bear market where it formed resistance underneath the Gaussian, the upper regression band, initially came back home to the middle regression band. So we've got the upper regression band, which is this green line at the top, okay, which marked the low in the January 2020 cycle. And then we've got the middle regression band, which initially didn't get a touch point, but you can see XLM was under the upper regression band as resistance, got forced down towards the middle regression band, and then exploded. So with that being said, we marked a bottom in January 2020. We marked a bottom in July 2024. Right now, this could have been the local bottom for XLM. It's actually holding above the upper regression band of the Gaussian channel as support. And again, there's a little bit of confluence, as I said, with sitting between sort of 24 cents and 19 cents, because the upper regression band of the Gaussian channel sits at 21. So even if XLM was to sort of come back down here over the next month or two and then get the break, as long as it's above, as I said, the 10 EMA and the upper regression band of the Gaussian channel, which are very close in conjunction here. One sits at 24 cents, one sits at 21. This could act as a support base to really get this move sort of going. So for the last sort of 3, 6, 9, 12 months, okay, for the last sort of, well, saying that, 3, 6, 9, for the last 10 months, XLM has been hovering above the upper regression band of the Gaussian channel and holding the 10 EMA as support. This is not signs of a local top out. This is signs of accumulation waiting for another decisive move. And I think the fact that we've tapped the upper regression band in previous cycles, we've near enough tapped the middle regression band of the Gaussian channel this cycle in July's 2024 lows, and we've had this breakout, shows that at the moment there is significant strength in XLM and it has vital support below, which could validate that move to those higher targets and those Fibonacci extension targets. So at the moment, I don't see any concerns here about XLM sort of topping out. You know, yes, there's a macro level of resistance that it needs to break out of at around 40 cents. And if we do see that close, in my honest opinion, that will be the kickstart for this massive euphoric move. Again, you can see we got really extended from the regression band back here in sort of 2018. And then we came back for that touch point. Okay, this was the bear market back then for XLM. And this was some sort of descending channel, okay, essentially, where you was caught between the support and resistance, got the upper regression touch point, went for the all-time high break in 2021, failed, and then came back to build these sort of higher lows towards the middle band of the regression Gaussian channel. And then we've broken out and are now holding above as support. If we was below the regression band, the upper regression band, I would think differently. If we was below the 10 EMA, I would think differently. But right now, I do believe this is an accumulation phase under the all-time highs, waiting for the euphoric break, just like we witnessed back here. Just like we witnessed back here. Okay, because XLM had this previous level of resistance as well, which was roughly at around 0.005. Now, when it initially broke out of that resistance, this is when the real euphoria kicked in back then, okay? And again, history doesn't have to repeat, but you know, it sure does rhyme at times. So, you know, once it actually came down, it started building these higher lows for several months and then boom, exploded. Right now, we've been caught in the ascending triangle structure. We're above key indicator support zones looking for that major break. So if we are to sort of rinse, repeat, or replicate a similar move to what we did in the past, potentially we could see XLM really start kicking into gear here. Why has it only done that for me? We really could see it start kicking into gear. Why is it doing that? I don't understand. Let's get this to the right sort of size. Yeah, very similar. We could see it kick into gear. And again, if we do get this sort of move heading into sort of 2026, this could be the sign that the XLM is looking to head towards those sort of $8 targets, $8 to $10. If we rinse, repeat a similar move to back then. So at the moment, the Gaussian channel, the 10 EMA and the 20 EMA are acting as key support, and we're still above those. This isn't a bear market. This doesn't say that we've topped out. Yes, we have a macro level of resistance, but the structural pattern that we are in is a bullish continuation pattern. These higher lows are forming, and as I said, this is an ascending triangle getting really compressed here between the EMAs. We've got this sort of higher low structure that's building right now under the all-time high resistance. Getting a break above 40 cents will be the catalyst to send this thing to new euphoric highs. Now, again, the psychology as well behind it, we need to look for confirmation. So if an ascending triangle breakout is genuine, the flatline resistance level should become a support level, right? So what it's initially saying is if XLM can sort of coil up here and get the break, and it does break out, pulling back to this for support some point would be healthy for the continuation towards those targets. So really and truly, getting the breakout, back testing that previous resistance for support is what we would want to see. It doesn't necessarily have to happen. If we was to start, you know, coming back down here, then just going vertical, believe me, it will just come down just as fast eventually. Okay, you want to break out, see a back test, and then continue the trend, right? So ultimately, that's kind of what I'm looking at here. If we look at the monthly time frame and zoom in a little bit here as well, you'll notice that XLM is also still above its 10 and 20 EMAs on the monthly, and these are acting as a key level of support. So what I was looking at in the past for XLM, which also gives us a little bit of confluence here. Okay, there might be something to look at. There might be a bull flag structure as well, because XLM got really caught between a level of resistance and a level of support here. Okay, and it had a flagpole. So this is where we go from the bottom of this massive euphoric candle up to the resistance. We then created this sort of falling wedge or flag. What we could do to get this target is by simply, when we actually broke out, although we're coming back to a key level of support, this target alone sits at $2. So the bull flag target on the monthly time frame is even pointing to not a larger breakout, sorry, pointing towards the breakout and confluence of actually tackling the previous high from January 2018. It's been nearly 7 years since XLM has broke its all-time high, and they're continuously developing, they're continuously building. You know, this is a financial giant, a payments giant. So I really honestly think this macro ascending level of support, the ascending triangle that I had on at the start of the video, is going to catapult this thing to new all-time highs very, very soon. Now, just before I go, looking at key levels of resistance and support, right now you can see that there is this descending level of resistance that XLM needs to break. And ultimately, we could get a Fibonacci on here going from the local high in November back down to the lows of which we came from. Okay, so we're tracing back down to this wick low in August 2024. And what we could do is get the 0382 and the 05 Fibonacci. These are the key retracement levels, retracing from this high in November back down to the August lows in 2024. And you can see that this month we've had a wick back down to 28 cents. Now this 28 cents has also backtested a level of previous resistance. You can see at these months here, sort of March, April, May, June, XLM was struggling to break above 28 cents. But then we came into July and we melted through it. And within doing so, this is where we've created this descending level of resistance, this white line. And at the moment, for the last for the last 4 months, this is where we're seeing rejection. So we had prior rejection under 28 cents. We broke out, ran into resistance on this descending trend line. And now we've corrected back down to 28 cents with this wick for a key level of support. So even if XLM, for example, this month, you know, it still gets a bit rocky. Even if we pull back to 28 cents and then go for the breakout, this would be a lovely structure. And I mean, even failing that, you've got 22 cents below on the 050 from these lows sort of back in March, April, May, and June. So XLM has a lot of support below. It has key Fibonacci support. It's got the 10 and 20 EMAs on both the monthly and 3-month time frame, which it's above. And there's also another indicator as well. If I look at, I think, was it the Gaussian channel on the monthly? Yeah, so on the monthly time frame, the Gaussian channel flipped into a bullish trend flip in August. Now, what we see on bullish trend flips is normally a correction. And we actually got the correction. When we actually created the trend flip right here in August, if I get the vertical line on, you'll see that this is where we actually started to come in for this correction. Now, within doing so on the monthly time frame, we've retraced back to the upper regression band of the Gaussian channel, which could hold as a key level of support and act as that catalyst to push towards those highs. So I genuinely think there's a massive euphoric break coming, and with tying up with the ascending triangle structure that we was looking at for XLM, where it's building this higher low base and it's ultimately got this sort of macro level of resistance, this is a bullish continuation pattern. And again, the breakout will due to be explosive when it occurs because we've been coiling up for over 2,800 days. In fact, roughly around 2,800 days, XLM has been under this level of resistance and building higher lows. If this project was sort of lower lows over time and running into this resistance, concerning. But this is a bullish outlook. This is a ascending triangle pattern. Bears reject the higher price levels, which we've seen on the chart. This is where bears are rejecting the prior sort of highs in the bull markets, okay? And this is where it's locally topped out before. However, we also have the bulls who are more persistent and setting higher lows over time. This is where the bulls are stepping in. So arguably you could say, well, we've run into this resistance point. It's now time to retest this ascending support. But as I said, above the 10 EMA, above the 20 EMA, above the upper regression band of the Gaussian channel on the monthly, above the upper regression band of the Gaussian channel on the 3-month time frame, doesn't tell me we're looking to retest this ascending support yet. What it tells me is we're coiling up in accumulation for the last 6 to 9 months, looking for a major breakout. So I hope you've enjoyed the content, guys. Again, how I get my targets on for XLM is by going from the 2020 cycle low back up to the all-time high from sort of 2018, and we're sort of looking again at $8.50. So my targets for this cycle, once XLM starts closing above 40 cents, sit between, I know it's quite a broad range, guys. I think $2.47 is really attainable, quite easy in all honesty. $4 is pretty conservative, and then $8 would be a euphoric target. So I hope you've enjoyed the content, guys. From Chart Nerd TA, take care. Peace out.